to Debut Spotlight. I'm Rachel Barenbaum, and today my guest is Peace Adzo Medie. She is the author of the brand new book, His Only Wife. It just dropped. I loved this book. There are all kinds of big themes, big ideas in here, and I'm so thrilled to have Peace here today. Tell us, what is your book about?
Well, thank you for having me, Rachel. I'm excited to be joining you. So my book, His Only Wife, my debut novel, is about a young woman, Afi, who finds herself in an arranged marriage, a marriage that has been arranged by her family's very wealthy benefactor, an older woman who has arranged this marriage with her son because she doesn't approve of the woman her son is with. And Afi has been tasked with, separating her son, who is Ellie, separating Ellie from the woman that the family doesn't approve of, and of bringing Ellie closer to his family. But on another level, it's a book about a young woman and her personal growth, how she comes into her own, how she navigates marriage, and comes to a place where she's able to make big decisions about her life and about her career.
This book has already gained all kinds of attention, and I've read a number of people saying that you are attacking African patriarchy. What do you think about that?
Well, I would say I'm attacking the global patriarchy, because patriarchy is not, it's not an African thing, it's a global thing. And this is a very universal story. Women everywhere in the world are subject to different kinds of pressures. Social pressures to conform, social pressures to behave in a certain way and to follow certain rules. And I just wanted to write a book about, and I mean, Afi is the main character, but there are several women in this story. I wanted to write a book about women who were resistant, right? And I think that story of resistance is very much a global story that many women will be familiar with.
I love that. Take out the African part of that. Instead, you're attacking patriarchy. It's like when people try to say this is women's fiction as opposed to just fiction, right? It's just patriarchy.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. When I read this book, I thought that it was really a book about limits, testing limits, pushing limits. Did you intend that?
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, I'm a researcher. And a lot of my research focuses on gender norms and how the women are impacted by gender norms and the consequences that they suffer when they try to push the limits. And so I really wanted to write a book about a woman, a young woman who was pushing the boundaries and who was stepping on toes and doing things that people disapproved of. And I wanted to portray her in a favorable light because there's a tendency to, I think, be very harsh with such women. You know, I mean, the examples of women in American politics, right? Women who try to run for positions of leadership, we all see how they fare. So I really wanted to write a book about a woman that was pushing the boundaries. And it's very much a story that is within the home, within marriage. But I mean, there's something that we know from research is that if you want to understand what happens in the highest levels, if you want to understand what happens in like political office, you need to study the home. So if you want to understand why it's so hard for people to vote for a woman as president, you need to understand how women are brought up in the home and what they're told and the boundaries or the challenges that they face. So basically, I wanted to write this book about a woman that was pushing boundaries, or women that were pushing boundaries and doing things that people frowned upon, but they did because they felt that it's what they wanted for themselves.
That's fantastic. And as a part of that, you made sure there was no happily ever after Disney ending. And I was thrilled about that. Can you talk about that?
Without giving anything away. So one of the things I was doing, I wanted the book to reflect reality. And in reality, it's often we don't get the happy ending. We don't get a Disney ending. And for me, that was very important. And I remember after reading it, I spoke to several friends and said, would you have done what Afi did? Do you think it was realistic? It was very important for me for the ending to be realistic.
Can you tell me a little bit about your path to publication, how long it took to write the book and finding your agent?
So I began working on this book around 2000 and the end of 2012. I had just finished my PhD and I was unemployed for an entire year. And I began writing fiction. I've always written fiction, but I began writing fiction again during this period of unemployment. But even when I started working again, I continued working on the book alongside my nonfiction, alongside my research. And along the way, I also wrote short stories. So I published a handful of short stories. And it was through these published short stories that I found an agent. My agent read one of my short stories and reached out to me. And like 5 years after I began working on the book, it was acquired and it's being published today.
You have an extremely impressive resume. You are a novelist, but also academic. Can you talk about how you balance these two worlds?
So a lot of my writing happens in my head. So I spend a lot of time thinking about plots and characters. And alongside that, I'm also thinking about research projects, and I often have multiple research projects going on at the same time. So there's always the competition for time, but then there's also the competition for mental space. And so sometimes I will tell myself, okay, Friday, Saturday, you think about fiction. Monday morning, you stop thinking about fiction. And there are times where I don't want to stop and I have to like force myself to stop thinking about fiction and switch. I'm still trying to figure out how to combine the two, to be honest. When I was writing His Only Wife, I was writing an academic book, and I would do crazy hours, like wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, write fiction until like 6 a.m., and then switch to nonfiction, and then go into the office, and then I will teach, and then I'll meet with students, and then I'll come home, and then I'll write. It was just, yes. I honestly don't know how I did it. I don't think I'm able to replicate what I did the first time, and I don't want to replicate it. It was just too demanding, too taxing.
So what do you want readers to take away from your book?
Well, I think the main thing I would like people to take out of this book is that the path to growth, the path to empowerment, to independence is really a straight one. Is very bumpy, and that, you know, that Afi as a character takes one step forward and takes 2 steps back. So I really want people to kind of recognize and hopefully appreciate the complexity of young women finding their voice and coming to a place where they feel that, you know, they can speak and say the things that they want to say, and even break the rules.
Do you have any advice for new writers?
So I think discipline is very important, but at the same time, be kind to yourself and live life, enjoy life.
Peace, thank you so much for joining me today. I loved His Only Wife. I hope everyone goes out and buys a copy. May you sell many, many books. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.